Hi everyone, it's Sunday, and today, as with every Sunday, is a day where we review goals and set up the next week. So Sunday is the first day of the week for me, and it's great for me because I get up super early, get up at 5 on a Sunday, get into the office, get some work done, then go climbing, and then set up the rest of the week for the rest of Sunday. So Sunday is really the day to get everything set up and also to review the week before. I love getting up early on a Sunday. Nobody's about. I kind of get a jump start on the week and it feels really great and productive. I feel like I'm making progress. Today, we're going to do two things. One is to review the goals that I set about 4 weeks ago, review how well they're going. I'm not going to change them because I think they're good goals, but just have a look at them. Review the kind of week that I've just had, which has been a bad week in a sense for goals, because I've had a bit of a cold and it's thrown me off. And so we're going to have a look at that. Then we're going to talk about a process or a concept called getting locked in. So getting locked in is basically really focusing and intensely working towards your goals. And we'll go in much more detail about that, including what getting locked in is like. What are the ways you can get locked in, and then what can kind of get you out of this process of being locked in. So let's start with the goals. So I've got them here. These are the goals that we set out. There's three main categories: zero to finals for me, Tom Watchman YouTube channel, so this YouTube channel, and then my health and fitness goals. So these are really the focus of the next, say, 3-6 months. With zero to finals, I'm working on pediatrics at the minute, and I'm trying to write the second edition of the book, Make Podcasts and Questions, and I'm aiming for 3 podcast episodes per week. With YouTube, I'm aiming for 1 YouTube video per week. For the Tom Watchman channel, I'm aiming for 3 YouTube videos a week, at least, but I've been doing them daily. And then with health and fitness, I'm aiming to lose weight, get down to 86 kilos, do climbing twice a week, and improve my mobility and fitness by doing 3 times a week strength training and twice a week cardio. Okay, having gone through all of that, let's look at this tracking table that we have. So for this week, we're 31st to today, to yesterday, which would be let's go to the 5th. This was actually the 29th, 22nd. Okay. So let's look at podcasts. I'm going to do them in green when I've achieved that goal and red when I've missed that goal. Unfortunately, with podcasts, I didn't get any recorded this week. I did write a new topic and I could have recorded the podcast, but I didn't get the chance to. Then with Zero to Finals videos, I did no videos this week. I did make some good progress. I'm working on an atrial fibrillation video, which is a big one. So I had to redo the script, redo the recording, and I got started on a lot of the illustrations, but I didn't get it done. So that's 0 for this week. How many Tom Watchman YouTube videos did I do? I did 7. So I did manage a daily video, which is great. For weight loss, I went from 93.2 to 94.1 kilos, which is bad. I gained, how much is that? Plus 0.9 kilograms. So I've actually gained weight this week. I've been basically off the diet, not sticking to my diet, not sticking to the exercise. And that's basically because I've been ill and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I should have been more disciplined, but I kind of let things go, which is a shame. Climbing sessions, this is another green one, which is good. I did do 2 climbing sessions. Strength sessions, I did 0. And cardio sessions, I did 0. Basically because I didn't feel well. It's kind of short of breath even walking upstairs. You can probably hear in my voice that my nose is quite congested. I'm still not 100%, but I'm going to push through and get back on it. So these are my goals for the week. For next week, I want to get all of these back in green like they were last week and really get locked in. So let's talk about getting locked in. This is our topic for today, all about getting locked in. So I want to first start with, what is getting locked in? What does it actually mean? So what is getting locked in? In a way, you might already have a vague or a kind of fluffy feeling about what getting locked in is. It's kind of that process where you're fluffing around with your habits and your goals. You're not really quite sure what you're doing. So you're like fluffing around. Maybe you have a good day of dieting, then you have a bad day. Maybe you do some exercise one day, you don't do it the next day. Maybe you kind of pursue a bit of a goal, but then you don't really stick to it. This is kind of fluffing around that you do. And then when you get locked in, there's kind of a definitive start point, and you just start cranking out on those goals, having a really clear strategy. And locked in is where you're really, really focused and motivated towards a goal. But let's be a little bit more specific and look at some of the individual components of being locked in. So number one, you have a clear goal. Whether that goal is to lose weight, gain muscle, get fitter, work towards a marathon, they're all kind of fitness goals, but it could be work goals. Like currently for me, it's YouTube videos every day with this Tom Watchman channel. It could be writing a book, could be recording podcasts, could be revising for an exam, could be like going through a dissertation project or something. You have a very clear goal about what you're trying to achieve. And the clear goal is important. If you have a vague goal, you'll end up with this kind of fluffy approach. If you say, I just want to get better at this particular thing. Say you're learning a language. I just want to get better at speaking French. It's a bit vague and it's hard to get locked in on that. You need a very specific, clear goal. Second thing is you have a defined process or strategy. If your process is not defined, meaning that you know exactly what steps you need to take every day or every week in order to achieve that goal, it's very difficult to get locked in. So for example, with this Tom Watchman channel, the goal is to do a video every day, which means I have to sit down, record a video, edit the video, and then upload it the next morning when I wake up at 5 a.m. That's a very defined process and a very clear goal, which means I can get locked in on that. If it was like, build this YouTube channel, but upload a video when you feel like it, kind of have a go at it, but there's no clear process. What happens is, what's been happening with this Tom Watchman YouTube channel for the last, I think it's been like 5 years or so up until this point, is I might put a video out every like 6 months or so and then do one or two and then stop doing it for a while. It's very vague and there's no clearly defined process. Process is more important actually than inspiration or motivation. So if you feel kind of really inspired by a video, I'm going to go do this thing, I'm going to build a YouTube channel, I'm going to revise for my exams. You have this like inspiration, I'm going to do this thing. That's not going to get the thing done. If you just rely on how you're feeling and that motivated feeling, that's great, but it doesn't get you locked in. It doesn't get the objective complete. It doesn't achieve your goals. You need a process that says, okay, here are the steps and here's what I need to do every day or every week. That's what actually gets the thing done and gets you locked in. Third thing with getting locked in is taking action. Consistently. So you might have a process where you say, okay, I need to sit down, record the video, edit the video, put the video out. Or if you're revising for an exam, I need to sit down, go through a topic, do questions on that topic, record my scores, and do that every day. That's your process, but you need to actually take action and do it. If you have a process that says you need to do this daily thing and you take action on the first day because you're feeling inspired and motivated, but the next day you're not taking action, you're not locked in and you're not making as much progress as you could be. So taking action consistently is really important. Number 4, avoiding distractions. Whenever you're working hard towards a project or a bigger goal than you can achieve in, say, an hour or so, and you need to take regular action. For example, if you've got a big medical school finals exam coming up, you can't revise for that in an hour. You need to take regular, consistent action over 2 months plus in the lead up to the exam. During that time, there's going to be loads of distractions, loads of like appealing things that appear and say, look at me over here, I'm more interesting than this goal that you've set. When you're locked in, those distractions, you kind of like, you've seen those horses where they're going down the road and they've got their blinkers on to avoid distractions so they don't get excited by a thing over there and bolt or go off course. When you're locked in, you're like that with your blinkers. You're avoiding distractions. You're absolutely just plowing ahead with your goals, taking those consistent actions. If you're distracted, you're not locked in. You might see the distraction, but dismiss it and say, oh, I'll deal with that later. I'm locked into this goal at the minute. That's being locked in. Number 5 is no hesitation or doubt. So when you're absolutely locked in, when you're in the most optimal locked in kind of state of mind, you don't have doubt about that goal. You're just focused purely on the goal. You're not hesitating. You're not thinking, oh, should I make a video today? Should I do this revision today? Should I do this thing today? Maybe I should look at this other goal. No, when you're locked in, you're absolutely avoiding hesitation and doubt. And number 6, when you are locked in, properly locked in, discipline becomes easier. So these are the 6 things how I would define being locked in. So the next question is, how do you get locked in? Because these things all sound great. Being locked in, avoiding distraction, taking clear action, having a clear goal, feeling sort of motivated towards that, not having any distractions or doubt. That all sounds great. How do you achieve it? How do you get to this state of being locked in? Well, the first thing I would say is it takes a bit of time. So it takes, I've found, about 2 weeks at least. I found if you have all of these things lined up, so clear goals, clear action, clear process, and you're super focused, it still takes about 2 weeks before you get locked in. So up until that point, you're still just relying on discipline and motivation and just pushing yourself to do it. Once those 2 weeks are up, could be a bit longer, could take 4 weeks, could take 6 weeks. But once that period's up and you get locked in, everything gets much easier. So number 2 is, initially, it's a grind. Okay, so that initial period, that first 2 weeks or that first 4 weeks, you're not locked in at this point. It takes time to get locked in. So initially on this grind, you're just having doubts and there's distraction. So when I start a new diet, what happens, or when I start back on the diet, what happens is that for that initial 2 weeks, I feel a lot of cravings. I feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't start this diet yet. Maybe I should just have one more week off the diet. Maybe it's not right for me at the minute. You know, you have all these doubts, you have all these distractions. You think, oh, I'd just like to eat this thing, whatever it is. You also have to rely a lot more on discipline. But discipline is actually more important than motivation. Motivation is good for, say, 30 minutes or an hour. But I found if you need to get through that initial 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 week period trying to get locked in, motivation doesn't carry you through that, because the first couple of weeks is really difficult. It's a challenge. It's hard to get through that. And if you're relying on motivation, the doubts will overwhelm the motivation. So at this point, you just got to rely on discipline. If you just stick with it and stick to the plan and stick to the objectives, that just grinding through that for the first 2 weeks is going to be more powerful than trying to go through on just motivation. And the key is just to keep going. Initially, that period is a grind. If you don't keep going, you'll fall off and you'll never get locked in. So you've just got to tell yourself, okay, this is a tough couple of weeks, but once I get through this, everything will be much more smooth sailing. I'll be locked in. I'll feel great about it and start achieving the goals. Just push through that and stick with it. So the third thing is consistency. If you are not consistent, you won't get to the point of being kind of locked into these goals. The key here is to be consistent. It's a bit like forming a habit. Meaning that you're kind of training your brain to think this is the new normal. This is how I operate in the world. If you are good for one day, fall off and don't do things properly the next day, you're back to being consistent, then you're off the bandwagon for another day. You're not going to get locked in because you're not being consistent. You're not forming a habit. Your brain still says, oh, I have off days. I won't, there's days where I eat badly, or there's days where I don't do my revision. There's days where I don't make any progress. There's days where I don't upload videos. Whatever it is, you're forming a habit to say, you know, it depends how you feel. Just do it how you feel. Whereas if you're really consistent and you do the same thing every day, what happens is your brain says, this is just the new normal. This is just how I operate. There is no option for having a day where I just don't bother. So consistency is essential. And it's really the same thing over and over. So if you're having times where you're not doing the thing, you're not sticking to that same thing over and over again. You're telling your brain it's okay. Some days you just have a bad day, you just don't do it, and then before you know it, there'll be like 2 bad days a week, then 4 bad days a week, then you're just back to your old habits. Consistently doing the same thing over and over again is how you get locked in. And then the fourth principle of how you get locked in is to wait to see results. This is essential. When you start seeing the results, that's when being locked in becomes so much easier. So for example, let's say with a fitness program, you're trying to get stronger, and you're consistently lifting weights, whatever your routine is, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, whatever. For the first few weeks, you might just feel sore all the time. It'll be a grind. You won't really feel that motivated. You think, oh, maybe this isn't the right strategy. Maybe this isn't the right workout program. Maybe I should be cutting. Maybe I should be bulking. Have all these doubts. You'll feel like kind of uncomfortable with the process. You won't be seeing any results. But then, say 3 weeks in, suddenly you're lifting heavier. You're less sore than you used to be. Maybe you notice that you look a bit stronger. So you start seeing some results. Plus, you've also started forming those habits of this is just the new normal. And at that point, suddenly the motivation surges and you feel really locked in. Great, this is working. I'm going to keep doing it. You also in that habit of doing it. So at that point, you're really going to be locked in. But that's going to take some time. Before you start seeing any results, you just need to keep going based on discipline. Then when you start seeing results, you'll just be locked in. So, next thing, how do you know when you're locked in? How do you know when you are locked in? So at what point do you know, okay, I am locked in? At this point, I feel good about it. You might know that intuitively, but there's some key things you can look out for. Number one, it gets easier. Okay, so at this point, you don't have to think. So at this point, you're not sort of struggling through that daily grind of just sticking to discipline and pushing through. At this point, it starts to feel like you're in a groove. So you start to, just be in the habit of doing it. So for example, if I start a process of getting up at 5 a.m. every day, first couple of weeks, every time I wake up just feels terrible. It's like, oh gosh, I want to stay in bed. I want to just, go back to sleep. I want to hit the snooze button. I don't want to go down to the gym and work out. I don't want to do anything. I just want to be in bed. And there's doubts. Maybe this is just stupid. Why should I get up at 5 a.m. every day? This kind of stuff. Then after a couple of weeks, when it's all starting to go smooth, suddenly it's like 5 a.m. rolls around, just ready to get out of bed. But you might wake up before the alarm even goes off. And then you just feels natural, like, okay, then the alarm goes off, straight away, out of bed, and get on with the day. So it just starts to feel much easier. You feel like you're floating through it rather than grinding through it. And that's a sign you've got locked in. Second thing is the results feed your motivation. So if you start seeing results, let's say you're revising for an exam, and you start noticing that, or you start seeing that when you're doing practice questions, or when you're trying to actively recall information, all that information has sunk in. Suddenly you know stuff. Your test scores are going higher, your free recall is getting better, you start attending placements and people notice that you know lots of stuff. When you're reading things, it just seems like you understand it. Everything's looking good. That feeds the motivation. So you think, yeah, this is working. This is great. I'll keep going. At that point, you're probably locked into the revision strategy, which is great. And then the third thing is, okay, that's it. So these are the two main things. At that point, you might feel that, you're really locked in. Final thing to go through is what can unlock you. So these are important things to look out for. With my own personal goals, you'll probably see I was getting locked in. So the first couple of weeks were a bit iffy. The third week, I was really locked in. Everything was green. But then the fourth week, this week, I got unlocked and it all fell apart. And that was triggered by a nasty cold that I developed basically a week ago today. You can still hear it in my voice. I wish this cold would just be done with. My plan with this cold, just as a side note, is to get locked back in, really get back on the grind, back on the discipline. The next 2 weeks are going to be challenging because I'm going from basically a cold start again now. Once I get locked back in, that's great. But sometimes if you've got like a lingering cold, you're not quite 100%, you can't use that as an excuse. You just have to get back on it. So what can get you unlocked? Well, with me, you can see this is an illness. So having a cold, having any kind of like sort of physical health problem can get you unlocked from your process, which can be very frustrating. Second thing is a holiday. So I've had a bunch of times over the last couple of years where I've been really locked in, and then something's come up like, a friend stag do, a holiday with my family, something else. And that's great. And I'm very happy to be on holiday. But the problem is when you go on holiday, you're out of your routine, start eating bad food, you don't not getting any work done, and then you get unlocked and then you have to start the whole process again. So holiday is terrible for getting you unlocked. However, sometimes a holiday is really good in the sense that if you've been fluffing around for a while because you're a bit burnt out and you have a holiday and you properly relax, you feel great, you can come back from holiday and that's the point where you start getting locked in again. So holidays are pros and cons really, depending on the timing. Another one is a life event. Sometimes you just can't predict big life events. Sometimes you can predict them. So you could be getting married. You could have something else. Could be like a bereavement in the family. A loss of your job. Any kind of like unexpected life event can throw the whole thing off, and that's very understandable. Fourth thing is completing your goal, which is usually okay. So let's say you're preparing for your exams or you're training for a marathon or whatever that goal is, there's a definitive end date. So you work really hard towards that end date, complete the end date, and then you don't need to be locked in anymore. You've completed the goal. You've got to be a bit cautious though, because you don't want, say you're training for a marathon and you're using that as motivation to stay fit and healthy, and then you run the marathon, you don't want to fall completely off the bandwagon. So it may be worth scheduling, say, another half marathon in another 6 weeks or so, something that kind of keeps you training. Because if you complete your goal and you fall off and you're then not locked in, and you're benefiting a lot from being locked in, then that's not so great. And then the final thing to note is burnout. And burnout basically means that you've been doing something challenging for a long enough period and having a high enough stress level over a long enough period that you've kind of eaten into your reserves and now you're washed out. You don't have anything left. And I find that if I'm really locked in intensely for a particular goal, I can usually sustain that for about 3 months. And at that point, I get a bit burnt out and I need a break. We're nowhere near that with this set of goals. So we need to get locked back in again. So at this point, thanks for watching this video. You've seen my goals. You've seen how this week I've got unlocked. The week going forward from today onwards, my plan is to really get locked back in. And the next couple of weeks are going to be tough. It's going to be very much dependent on discipline, then once I'm locked in, hopefully I don't get ill, nothing throws me off, and I can then sustain that long term to really achieve all those goals. I'll bring you along for the journey. Hopefully you found this video helpful and it's made you think a bit more about getting locked in yourself for your own goals. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video, which will be tomorrow.